hello, hello.
And welcome to the Hildebrand Law Firm topic for today.
I'm Kirsten Hildebrand.
And I'm Matt Kaplan.
And today we are going to talk about a really interesting issue. And this is one of the reasons that people don't think about when they are considering putting an estate plan in place, but it actually ends up being very important. And that is protecting your estate plan if one of you predeceases, which is the most likely situation, and the other spouse may remarry.
Now, does something like that happen often? Have you seen, especially in your experience, someone passes away, especially 40s or 50s, a young couple, someone passes away and then someone else gets remarried?
Even 60s, 70s, 80s, absolutely. And I will say this, my experience is that the women are kind of okay not remarrying, but those men, they want and need to have somebody taking care of them. So I have a story, and it's one of those situations where husband and, well, actually it was two people, and they had both had really successful marriages, and the man, his wife, sadly passed away, and the woman, her husband, had passed away, and they found each other in their 70s through a dating website online, which is very interesting to me that they would be at that age group and have found each other in that way. So they were very excited and they got married, and they actually had their own estate plans in place, but they did not have revocable trusts in place. So what ended up happening is, over the course of time, as the children saw the parents aging, and each of them have a pretty substantial estate and each of them have their own children, but the children of the husband started to get really, really concerned about preserving that estate and making sure that if he were to predecease his wife, his second wife, that the second wife would not be able to get to his assets, because they were concerned about holes in the plan. And they were right. There were holes in the plan. So in this situation, sadly, what occurred is he started coming down with dementia. The worried children from a different city came running into the state of Wisconsin, literally kidnapped him from his wife, who was taking care of him in the home, took him back to the state of origin where he had originally had his family and his wife of 35 or 40 years. They put him in a home, and they will not allow his current wife to visit him except if somebody is present, and they have very strict time frames on it. And all of this is because they are very insecure and worried about whether or not their inheritance is going to be protected from this second wife.
That is such a wild story.
And they happen every single day.
Yeah, that is an absolutely bizarre story, but it makes total sense because, in a lot of undertones that we've gotten into in this video series, is that a lot of what you're doing with estate planning is not always for you. A lot of what you do in estate planning is for the ones that you leave behind. And so, whether it be good or bad, a lot of kids find themselves emotionally invested because a lot of them know that they're going to be financially invested as well. And so
Yes.
they want to take a huge interest in exactly what's going on. But yeah, that's a
I
absolutely
know.
bizarre
And
story.
in this case, it was one child. There were, I think, 4 children of the husband. In this case, it was one of the children, but then it was teamed up with one of the son-in-laws. So not even a blood child, but a son-in-law who was like, we need to make sure that we're preserving this estate. So one of the things that I always talk about is a value in putting assets into an irrevocable trust, or a trust that becomes irrevocable upon the first spouse to pass, is that now there is that bubble of protection around the assets that were earned during the marriage that legitimately should go to the children of that marriage according to what that couple wanted. So it's this concept of when the couple comes in to do their estate plan, what they want at that point in time should really be preserved as best as possible. And the only way that I can think to do that is with the type of irrevocable trust that we put together.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, and so this kind of reminds me of a story that I heard too. So it was a young couple, and this was really unfortunate. Young couple, they had two young children. Guy passes away. When the guy passed away, his wife is wallowing away at home. She's very sad, and she thinks to herself, I just got all this life insurance money. I have all of his assets. He was a very high powered attorney, and she thinks, this schmuck, he never let me get that pool that I always wanted.
Ah, the pool.
The pool that I always wanted. I mean,
Okay.
here in Wisconsin, you can only really use a pool 3 months out of the year if you're
Yes.
lucky. So, but she always wanted that pool. And so she's like, you know what? Now that I have all this money and I have no husband, I'm going to get that darn pool. So she gets a pool put in and she's not going to tend to it. So what does she do? She decides, I'm going to hire a pool servicing company. When she hires a pool servicing company, they decide to send some guy named Biff who only works out in a Speedo,
Oh.
washing the stuff on the pool. She's looking at Biff and she goes, huh, this is interesting. Biff gives her attention. She gives him attention. All of a sudden, she runs away with Biff.
Oh, my word.
Now, imagine that guy looking down from heaven thinking, where the heck is all my money going? He didn't have anything in a trust. Everything just went to his wife. And now, what's his wife doing with it? I don't know. Did they go off to Vegas and get married? Did they go to Europe for a couple months? He doesn't know. And that's the thing. It's the uncertainty. Exactly like what you were saying. If you want to guarantee that the plan that you have in place is going to get followed regardless of what happens in life, the best way to do it is to plan and to make sure you have one of these trusts that can help you out.
Well, and it also does even protect people when their mind starts to go. So it's not a foregone conclusion that we're going to be able to keep our full faculties. So that reminds me of another client. Actually, we've literally had 2 or 3 of these cases, but I'll speak to one specifically where mom and dad were married for 50 years. Dad passed away. The kids are in other parts of the country. Mom, unbeknownst to the children, starts to get dementia-like symptoms. And in that vulnerable state, she ends up going to the courthouse and marrying a 40-year-old. Okay, so she's 75, he's 40. What do you think he's out for? Well, he ended up taking all of the estate and then filing for divorce. And the kids came into this very conference room and they were absolutely furious. And they were like, what can we do? Can we take this to the authorities? Can we get the money back? Can we do anything to protect mom from what was clearly a totally insane situation? But unfortunately, there's just not a lot that the law offers to people in these situations. We hear about all of these scams that are going on relative to money. And I think almost anybody who has been involved in one of these through themselves or a relative or a friend knows that we simply do not have the resources to be able to have the law enforcement of any level, whether it be state or federal, try to recoup funds. They're really a lot more worried about murders and things like that. So what ends up happening is that goes to the bottom of the pile. Long story short, the money was gone in this case. There was nothing that we could do legally to claw the money back. And that literally was the entire estate that mom and dad had built up that they wanted to have go to their children as a gift after they passed away.
And I think one of the common themes of the stories that you and I presented and all of our points here is that a lot of the reason people get estate planning done, they want to make sure that their kids are taken care of.
Yes,
And
yes.
all they really want to care, all they care about is the legacy they're leaving behind for their children. And they want to make sure that whatever plan they come up with their spouse while they're in a right state of mind is followed.
Because what a sad situation it is when mom and dad work so hard and sacrifice over all of these years to put together a nest egg that they can pass on to their children, and then all of a sudden something completely unexpected happens, like a remarriage where the kids just are left in a lurch, and that hard-earned money is really going someplace else. I mean, if you look at it even from a diagramming perspective, right? So in Wisconsin, if the husband and the wife get married, their stuff is all considered to be 100% marital as of the date of the marriage, unless they've put together what's called a prenuptial agreement. Now, who do you think is thinking about a prenuptial agreement when they are looking to get married? I will tell you, it is a very small percentage of people. I think they are really terrific, but it is definitely not the thing that you think about when you're also thinking about wedding plans. So what ends up happening is everything becomes marital at that moment, and then it just goes where it goes. And if let's say I had another case where he came into the marriage with $6 million. She came into the marriage with high heels and very blonde hair, and that was about it. And they got married and they had a very happy 10 years. And his 8 children ended up getting nothing when he passed away because it all went to high heels and blonde hair, who had her own children who did not know how to work. They were well into their 40s, and neither of them had a self sustaining job. And so now all of that family fortune was getting siphoned over to her children, and his original 8 children were completely left out in the cold. That's the sort of thing that we really want to try to prevent. Now, who knew that that was going to happen? Nobody.
Right.
Nobody would have predicted that that was going to happen, but it did happen. And that's the point. The point is, when you're doing your estate plan, you have to plan for the unexpected or the unusual. I will even say that my very own father-in-law, I will tell you this. I said a few years ago, well, if there's anybody who is never going to get into a situation where they're going to be giving away their money to somebody, it's my father-in-law. He's a CPA. He's worn the same pair of pants for the last 35 years, and he does not even give tips to waitresses. I have to go back to the table and, put the tip on the table.
Is he the kind of guy who orders a water cup and then puts soda in it?
Yes, he is. And when you know it, in his vulnerable state, after his wife passed away, he had 3 or 4 women calling him within a week of having his wife in the ground. And they wanted to be his, quote, special friend. And when you know it, one of them won the debate and ended up cozying up to him. And before you knew it, she was in his pocket. And so we had to go through some major work in order to unwind some things that had happened in that situation. And of course, again, who would ever guess that somebody like that, a tightwad CPA, it would be vulnerable? But he had literally given away huge chunks of money to her because he was showing initial signs of dementia. So that's my point. My point is that you can't say, oh, I'll never be in that position. I'll never do that. You don't know. And so that's why we really believe in protecting assets through an irrevocable trust, not only for the potential protection that it offers in terms of Medicaid compliance and being able to apply for Medicaid, but also just straight up protection of what you want the children to inherit.
No, totally agree, Kirsten. And I think as someone who's been married for 4 years, this is not something I think about ever, but it's definitely something that a lot of people should consider. Because I just have a dog. And, I want my dog to have certain things. And my wife and I have had that conversation. And if I see that dog with another dude, I'm going to flip it. That would be terrible. And so, yes, I can imagine if that dog was a child and if I was, 20, 30 years down the road, I could imagine that's something that would be very important to me for sure.
Yes, definitely. And we'll do one on pet trust, and then
Oh
we can
yeah.
figure out how we can make sure that dude doesn't touch your dog. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we are so interested here at Hildebrand Law Firm in protecting your today and your tomorrow. So join us next time, and we will have another very interesting topic. Have a great one.